This time of year, a good hoodie is absolutely essential, and the American Giant Classic Full Zip Hoodie is made to last a lifetime. With timeless style, heavyweight fleece, and durable details, you can depend on it for years to come. Snag the hoodie that will bring you comfort for life, the American Giant Classic Full Zip, and save 20% off your first order at american-giant.com when you use code CLASSIC24 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at american-giant.com, code CLASSIC24.
I am Tamar Cohen, and I make miniatures and dioramas.
Welcome to Art, the podcast where we get to know women from around the world of visual arts. I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Season 2, Episode 8. My guest this week is Tamar Cohen, a self-taught creator of miniatures and diorama. Her work reflects her passion for architecture, particularly European Gothic, castles, and Art Nouveau. Tamar was born in Tel Aviv, Israel in 1981, one of 4 children. She has an older sister who lives in New York and an older brother and younger sister who live in Israel. She describes her parents as being crafty in an artistic sense. Her father was an electrician by trade who enjoyed building furniture, and her mother knits quilts and is also an artist. As a child, Tamar studied painting, photography, sculpting, and history of art. When she was 21, she learned silversmithing for a year, but decided not to make that a career. Instead, she went to college, and then, having enjoyed gymnastics in her youth, she became a personal trainer for 6 years. In 2016, Tamar moved to Canada, and it was during the COVID pandemic lockdown in 2021 that she began building dolls' houses for her daughter. This proved to be the start of a new career, building miniatures and diorama, which is now a full-time job. Tamar lives in Montreal with her husband Zach, a concept artist, and their daughter Sophia. Tamar, welcome to the Art Podcast.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here.
I'm looking forward to delve into your miniature world. But first of all, I know you haven't had a glass of wine because you told me your sister suggested you did because you were a little bit nervous. So I just wanted to reassure you this is something like you and I sitting around having a glass of wine. That's how you have to imagine it, and just having a chat about your life.
I gladly will. Okay.
Well, it's a very interesting life because I know you were born in Israel, but you've been living in Canada now for, 7 years ago you moved with your husband?
Yeah. Yes. It's been 7 years now.
It's a very different climate, Tamar. How did you adjust?
Well, I have a very good coat and good shoes. Yes, it's completely different in any aspect. Architecture is different. People are different. I have to be honest, much more polite. And, well, I don't know. I guess it's funny because I didn't want to leave Israel. And when I met my husband, one of the first things that he told me is, I'm not planning on staying. I don't want to stay in Israel, and I'm going to move. I don't know where to, but I am going to move. And I decided to stick around, even though I really didn't want to leave. And when we arrived here in Montreal, I think it took me a month to just tell him I'm not going back. This is where I want to stay, and that's it. I still think so. I love it here.
Do you? And he's a concept artist too.
Yeah.
Tell me exactly what he does, because it's very different to what you do.
Well, when I met him, he was not a concept artist. He was an artist. He made oil paintings. Super talented, amazing. I was so impressed. And since it's not easy to make a living out of it, obviously, being an artist is a challenge. He decided to try and work in the gaming industry. So this is what he does. He works for a big gaming company, and he loves it. I mean, he gets to to paint. Sometimes his own creations. I mean, he makes characters, and sometimes it's somebody else's work that he needs to fix. But he kind of gets to create through my work sometimes, because he designs the 3D props and some stuff that I need for my work. So I think since we bought the 3D printers, he's very happy.
That's very interesting. And you mentioned there, how difficult it is to make a living being an artist. And I think that's something that you questioned when you wanted to do miniature work. But how did you, make a living doing that? Now, I suppose you've reached that. It was COVID that was the turning point for you then, and being locked down and building, I think you said, a doll's house for your daughter, who's now 6 years old. So that was the beginning of it all.
It's true. It started like that. I mean, let's go back to when I was in high school. And my dream was to be an artist. And I thought that this is what I'm about to study when I'm done with high school. And I had recommendations from my teachers and all the portfolio ready and everything. And then at some point, I felt like, okay, I don't know if this is what I want to do every day. And it's nice because it's been some sort of a hobby. But when you think about that as a living, I don't know. I mean, I felt it might be too much. And I gave up on that idea of being an artist. And when, as you mentioned, it was a few years ago during the pandemic, I just started making miniatures because, it was a way to pass the time while I was home not working, and I just felt like I have to do something because I cannot just sit, playing games on my phone or whatever all day. And I never imagined this is going to be an occupation. I did not think I'll make a living out of it. I just assumed that at some point I'm going to find a job or get back to my old job and keep doing what I did before. But I just didn't want to give up on it. Once I started, it was so much fun. And it gave me so much joy that I was like, I'm going to do everything in my power to make a living out of that, because I don't want to stop doing it. So yeah, I'm glad I'm there right now.
How long then, when you got into this, Tamar, was it before you actually could sell these miniatures and realize that it could be profitable?
When I just started, I just wanted to do whatever I felt like. Like I had crazy structures in my head and I just wanted to build them, and I didn't care if I'm going to sell that or not. So I started big. And then I met someone who has a studio, and he wanted me to do a workshop to teach people how to make miniatures. And I was like, wow, how am I going to turn this 150 hours build to a 12 hours workshop? So eventually I was able to kind of do the switch and move from building big structures and very complex ones to something more simple that people could actually do themselves, even if they're not coming from this world of making miniatures or crafts. And this made the big change. It made me build smaller framed dioramas, or shadow boxes, I think it's called. And and then people wanted to buy that. And I was like, hey, this is nice. I can finally sell my work. I found a way to make it affordable for people, and for me not to take more than like a couple of days or 3 days. So this is what made the change, I guess, the workshops.
Where did you pick all these skills up to? Is it something that you were self-taught?
Self-taught, I guess. But when I was 20, I studied how to be a silversmith. And even though it was like 20 years ago, it's there, the way you work and even the tools and some of the techniques that I'm using now because basically it's mostly like making miniatures, because everything is so small when you think about jewelries. And I guess some of the skills were there already, but I had to kind of combine that with some other skills that I had to learn myself, because honestly, I didn't really know what I was doing when I just started it. And since I didn't care if I'm going to sell that or not, or how long it's going to take me to build something, I just explored. I guess I was just like exploring techniques or materials, and I used basically whatever I had around. And only later I learned what proper tools I should use, or mostly what materials I better use to make everything more affordable, not so heavy, because now I ship my work and I cannot have everything with build with like MDF. I have to use foam. So yeah, I mean, I made big changes along the way.
And you're shipping this to anywhere in the world. Where have you been your biggest clients so far?
Not anywhere. Unfortunately, shipping from Canada is super expensive. So it's just the USA and Canada, basically.
Well, maybe that might change in the future if the postage comes down.
Who knows? Hopefully.
So in terms of these materials, then, you taught yourself what was going to be adaptable. Each design is unique. So you have to have a combination of skills then to think in those dimensions, right? It's not just a single dimension like painting or photography. And I know that that's something that you did do when you were younger too. So you've combined a number of different skills, haven't you, to do this?
Yeah, it's true. Well, I used to paint, so I guess the skills that I had from painting, obviously I'm using them now, because almost everything that I build, I have to paint. If it's a wall, if it's a bookshelf, everything needs to be painted. And sometimes if I want it to look weathered, then I have to work properly with the paint to get the effect that I need. So. And it's also a matter of practice, because it's not like painting that I used to do in high school or whenever. It's a different kind of skill. It is slightly different, but once you learn how, it's basically the same every time. And yeah, you can get better in time, obviously. But and I teach that. I teach that too. This is also how I make a living. I have Patreon, which is a platform where I upload tutorial videos, and then people can learn.
Did you ever imagine that you could not just become an artist, but actually teach this as well?
No. No. It is a lot. I mean, it feels good to know that I can actually teach others after only 3 years that I've been doing that, because this is not a long time. And I enjoy teaching because it makes me be more creative, because every time I think, I mean, like, okay, what else can I teach? What else can I give them that I haven't given yet? So it makes me kind of analyze my work, which I wouldn't have done without this. So I like it.
What has it taught you about yourself? Were you always a patient person that could work in fine detail, or has it taught you to become more patient and slow down?
That's a very good question. When I used to make jewelries, my problem was that I wasn't patient enough. So when you get to the stage that you have to make it shiny, what you do basically is you need to sand it so many times with different sanding papers, and it becomes very fine, if that's how you say that.
Yes, very fine grit. Yeah.
Exactly. So, And only then, when it's completely even, only then you can really use the paste and make it shiny. Because if you're not doing it well, then making it shiny would only show more the bad details. I don't know, the scratches that you missed, or, all the defects. So I wasn't patient enough to do that. And I always wanted it to be shiny before time, before it was really the time to do that. And I think that today, 20 years later, I am more patient. I'm like doing everything at the right time, not trying to go a step ahead before, just because I don't feel like doing this or doing that. I really pay attention to details much more, I think.
I'm wondering if when you were using that very fine grit, was that all the way down to 10,000 perhaps? So that's very fine.
I think more like 1,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then you use the paste, and then there are several pastes they kind of replace the sanding papers.
Well, I learned to go down to 10,000 just this past weekend, polishing some honeycomb calcite, and I went all the way down to 10,000 for the first time ever. So,
it probably looked good.
But it does, as you say, teach you patience.
Oh, yeah.
Step is, you do have to go down step by step by step to get it that fine. But looking at your work, the attention to detail is so finite. I'm wondering if when you're constructing something and you can, obviously you know where you're going with it, but mistakes do happen. Does that mean you have to start again, or can you often correct any faults as you go along with the materials that you're using? How finite is the destruction of the materials?
Well, basically both. So sometimes I have to tear it apart and build it again, which is awful when it happens. But it does, obviously does. And sometimes starting over completely usually doesn't happen to me. But sometimes something, let's say I glued something and it got glued in the wrong place, or, so yeah, I have to kind of rebuild some stuff, sometimes. And sometimes, since I'm pretty creative, I can find solutions or just a way to hide my mistakes in a very elegant way. So yeah, I have that too. But it's very annoying when that happens. But it doesn't happen very often because I kind of know what I'm doing.
Right. And you clearly have a passion for architecture and that attention to detail. And the European architecture particularly, Gaudi is one architect that comes to mind, the Catalan architect and designer. He was a great exponent, of course, of Catalan modernism. And I look at some of your work, and there's a likeness there. And so some of the castles, the Art Nouveau and Gothic work, I can see it all in your work. But are there other artists that come to mind that you would like to be emanating?
Well, first of all, this is a great compliment. Every time someone tells me something like that my work reminds Gaudi, that's amazing. That's a huge compliment. And yes, I really love the European architecture, which is so many different things. Basically, just saying European architecture is, I don't know, very vast. When I was in high school, that was the first time that I traveled to Europe. London was the first place I visited when I was 12. And then it was Paris, it was Italy, and anywhere I could fly to, basically, because it was just so much fun to see those castles. The architecture there is just incredible, because honestly, living in Israel is not a big thrill. The architecture there is sometimes beautiful, but to get to those beautiful structures, you really have to work hard. I mean, it's not everywhere. It's not like I'm walking out of my house here in Montreal, and I'm overwhelmed sometimes from the beautiful houses that I see. And it's not just that, it's the doors. The doors are different, the windows and the bay windows. I'm in love with those things. And obviously I make them because I love them. And no other specific architects that I can tell you that inspired me. It's mostly just a genre that I love, like Art Nouveau, which I love that in a way that I cannot even explain. But I cannot really make that as a miniature because it's too much. So I kind of simplify that when I try to create something like that, inspired by Art Nouveau, for example. I try to make it not as complex as Art Nouveau really is. Because I mean, like, what were they thinking? It's like, yeah, insane.
I'd also think of what you're creating is sometimes whimsical as well. There's humour to it, that you give it a personality.
That's a great compliment. I try. I mean, most of all, I think what I try to do is make people feel as if they're here, or just to feel some sort of a connection. I'm not just trying to recreate an existing building or an existing entry or a door. I'm trying to invent. First of all, I'm not. I use reference, but I never take things as they are. I am inspired by that, but I really like to create my own world, my own architecture, not my own architecture, but like buildings. And I love it that people keep telling me how they feel like they want to be there, or they feel like someone just left the room and there's a story behind that. And this is really what I'm trying to create when I do that. And this is why I don't take commissions, because I don't like it that people tell me what to do. I just want to do my own thing.
Well, let's go back, if we may, to, where this all began for you, because you had some influence from your parents too. Your father liked to build furniture, and your mother was into building quilts and has recently started painting. Yeah. So there's that arty background, if you like. What do you remember of what you were doing as a child in terms of, playing with different materials and having that influence of your parents as a child?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with my childhood, because I remember always the house was a mess. The house was a mess, and not because my mother didn't like to clean up or something. It's because they always felt like this is our house, the kids' house. I mean, like, if we wanted to take over the living room and build something, they would let us do that, even though it was not so much fun for them, I assume. And I always had like art supplies, papers, and paint, and so many other things just laying around waiting for us, not just me. It's the whole, like, we're all kind of crafty and talented, I would say, because we always had access to that as kids. And they always let us do whatever we wanted, even though it was very messy. And I remember when I was around 12, they let me have paint my wall, to have a mural on my wall, and basically to do what I wanted. And this is, as a child, I mean, like, this is great. It's amazing. I don't let my child that. I mean, honestly, every time she wants to paint, I go like, no, it's too messy. No, let's not. Do you want to do something else? And sometimes I feel so bad about that, perhaps because I'm doing it all day. And when she asks to do something together, I'm like, no, but this is what I did all day, and now I just want to chill out and don't do it. And yeah, It's not fair. I should do more stuff with her, I guess. Like what I had as a child. And my parents are both very creative and do things themselves. I mean, my father used to build furniture. He still does. And my mother does quilt and paint, and they were always very crafty, I guess. So when you live that kind of life, I guess it's almost inevitable not to do something that has to do with art.
Yes, pick something up. And you're one of 4 children. You have an older sister who lives over here in New York and an older brother and younger sister who are still in Israel.
True.
And that must be challenging for you too now, having family back there. But what do you miss most of the family life and growing up in Israel?
Wow, what a question. Well, I of course I missed my family. I mean, it's fun to just visit my parents whenever I wanted to. I spent a lot of time with my family when I was in Israel, and but it also has privileges living far. I know it's not very nice to say that, but sometimes you have your own family. I have my own family, and I don't always want to meet if I lived in Israel right now, probably every Friday I would have to go to a family dinner with rather my parents or my husband's parents. And when you have a child, they keep asking, when are you bringing Sophia? Can we see Sophia? We haven't seen her for like 24 hours. Can we see her? So sometimes it's nice to have family around, and sometimes it's really okay to just have your own space and do your thing without owing anything to anybody. I guess it goes both ways.
And what about school? I know you studied for 4 years and then you actually became a personal trainer. But when you were in school, what were you thinking that your career would look like?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think I studied gymnastics just because I was fascinated about how the body works, the muscles, the bones, to just know more about this crazy machine. And I loved it. I loved being a personal trainer, and I loved to train myself. I used to work out several times a week, and I enjoyed that. But and every time I had a partner, they were always very fit and were into that world. And then when I met Zach, my husband, I mentioned he's an artist, and it was the first time that I was dating an artist, and it was so different. And I bet he never imagined that I will end up being an artist too, because when he met me, I wasn't. I kind of neglected that world and kind of gave up on that. And I felt like, okay, I can make money out of being a personal trainer, and I love it. So this is going to be my life. And I was also a live model for artists, which I love doing very much. I was doing that for 10 years, and this is what I did before the pandemic. And I think that it gave me an access to the art world by not being an artist. I mean, I basically participated in so many art classes, like painting, sculpting, whatever. And I have hours of experience of listening to teachers, because I was, as a model, you just stand there and you listen to the instructions. And I think that some of it probably, I use some of it probably now when I paint or when I build the miniatures. And it's nice to have that.
Which artists do you most enjoy now? And when you look at artwork, if you visit a museum or a gallery, what's your preferred medium? What do you get most inspiration from, and which artists?
Which artists? It's hard to tell, but paintings. still. I mean, even though what I do is 3D, I like paintings very much, and not so much like the modern kind of paintings. And I'm not talking about Renaissance as well. What I love is Velázquez, kind of like Impressionism a little bit. Anything that you feel the paint when you feel like the artist hasn't finished his work completely, but was able to express exactly what they wanted. It's like, I don't like it when it's too polished. I like it when it's a little bit rough and you can really feel like the structure of the painting. But I haven't been to the museum for so long. I'm pretty ashamed of that. Because usually when I used to travel to different places around the world, the first thing I did was to go to the museum. And I have a confession to make. I haven't been at the museum yet. And I'm talking about 7 years. I haven't been there yet. So yeah, it's something I should fix.
Now, what about books and music? Where do you get your inspiration? What helps you when you're working?
Yeah, I take a lot of inspiration from books that I used to read because I'm not reading anymore. Another confession here. Since I started making miniatures, I stopped reading. I don't know why, because I used to read so much. And, well, obviously, I read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and those inspired me so much. I read that when I was in high school, but it's still there. I mean, I love the fantasy world, and when I watch movies, those are the kind of movies that I love watching. Because first of all, it gives you a glimpse of something that does not exist anymore or never existed, like the fantasy world of The Lord of the Rings. And I like it that it leaves some space for my imagination to go crazy. When you read a book, not when you watch a movie. And then you can actually imagine those locations. And this is something I take to my work. I mean, okay, now when I watch a movie, then everything is already there and I can be inspired from that too. But I should read books again now that I'm talking about that. Yeah, I should.
Do you take commissions, Tamar?
No, I do not. I don't like dealing with people.
Fair enough.
I don't like to be told what to do. I don't like it that someone has something, they imagine, and I have to guess what they see in their head. And I don't know, I just find it a bit too demanding. And I'm lucky because people like what I do and they buy what I do. So I don't have to take commissions. I guess that if people wouldn't have bought my work, perhaps I wouldn't take commissions. I don't know.
So with each concept then, is it always an individual structure? Or do you ever build, say, a street or a village?
This is something I haven't done yet. I did make my recent work, like the big one, is something like a street, but it's only like one house, but it has the feeling of a street. The reason why I avoid doing that basically is space. So I took over the dining area. I took over the dining table, and this is my studio now. So the table is not that big, and since I usually do not sell the big ones, I sell some, but if I'll make a street or something that size, like that is a complex structure, what will I do with that then? I mean, I ran out of space to store my work anyways. I mean, I would like to do something like that, but I just don't.
Do you ever see yourself having an exhibition where you can show your work and a number of pieces in one space?
Well, I had a couple of exhibitions. It was nice. It felt good to see my work displayed and to give people the opportunity to see it is amazing. And the only thing is, it's a bit complicated to kind of move around my work and to exhibit it. So the only option for me to exhibit is in Montreal, because anywhere else would be a nightmare.
Yeah, just shipping it to any other location. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I cannot do that. Some are very heavy as well, like the big house, the organic house that I built is, I don't know, 15 kilos or something. It's heavy and it's kind of fragile too. So I don't see a way to ship it unless I carry it myself, like with a car or something.
Where do you see the future then, Tamar? I mean, how do you want to continue to be just yourself as an individual without anyone else, in your workspace, so to speak? Or would you like to teach other people and create, more work on a larger scale? Not on a larger scale in terms of the model itself, but in terms of the size of business.
Well, for now, it's hard to tell because I really like what I do. But for me to stick around in one thing is not an easy thing. I'm the kind of person who kind of switches every now and then because I'm like, okay, I've had enough of it. And now I need to do something else. But I have the feeling that this time it's different because I get to create new stuff every time. I mean, sometimes I even fear that I might run out of ideas. But every time I think that, I have another one coming up. So as long as I'm able to keep doing that and keep selling my work so that I won't have to store it at home all the time, then I believe I'm going to keep doing this. And I do teach. I mean, I have Patreon, as I mentioned. So it gives me another dimension. It gives another dimension to my work, and I have the comments from people, and sometimes they ask me for more information about something, and then I make another tutorial about that. So it really keeps me busy enough to keep doing that and happy at the same time. So I don't feel like I'm a robot, just doing the same thing all the time. And even if something sells very well, I really avoid making it over and over again because I just don't want to exhaust it. And I try to stop, even if someone asks me to make another one. I'm like, no, this is it. I'm going to make a new design.
Now, are you very disciplined and working, every day during the week? How much time do you have to put into this?
Well, yeah, I am doing that as a full-time job. So I start my day around 9 a.m. and usually finish around 3:30. This is my work day. And since I work from home, I can have a coffee break once or twice, and I can just take a bath and do whatever I want, which is great. I love working from home.
Yes, there's a lot to be said for it. But what do you do for fun?
That's a good question. Well, I love dancing. And when I work, I listen to very not loud music, but like something that has like lots of rhythm. And I love singing and I love dancing very much. So every now and then I kind of stop my work and I dance. It's great to move around. Something like I just sit most of the day when I work. And it's great that I have the dancing. So this is something I really love. And sometimes when my daughter is with us during the evenings, so we put some music on and dance, and it's fun. Yeah. So I guess this is what I like to do. I used to be a ballet dancer. I used to teach that too. So yeah.
Are you teaching that to Sophia, or does she learn that somewhere else?
She likes gymnastics very much. She doesn't like me to teach her things. Well, she's kind of stubborn, and every time I try to teach her something, she goes like, "No, I don't want you to teach me anything." So I don't.
Like mother, like daughter.
Yeah. So every time I see myself in her, I cannot be angry because I'm like, oh, I was worse when I was her age, so I better shut up and take what's given to me.
If you could reset the time since you graduated from college, Tamar, seeing what you can do now when you thought that it would just be too much of a struggle to be an artist full-time, that you wouldn't be able to make a living, what would you tell yourself and what would you do differently?
I wouldn't do anything differently, to be honest, because I still think that being an artist is a struggle. And, well, most of all, we are here. I mean, like, I'm here in Montreal. Being an artist here in Montreal is not the same as being an artist in Israel. And I think that what I did everything I did for a reason. And it gave me another, I don't know how, depth, I guess. And I wouldn't change a thing. No. I was just lucky to be able to become an artist at some point in my life, because I guess it was in me and it just had to come out at some point in some way. So I'm glad it happened now, and I did not wait until I'm like 60 or 70 or whatever to discover that I can do art.
Are there any other forms of art that you'd like to explore?
Not at the moment, I guess. No, I'm pretty happy with just making miniatures and dioramas for now.
And you can see yourself doing that for the foreseeable future anyway, and making a living out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're in a very happy place, I think, Tamar.
Happy to say I am. Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, continue to create those beautiful, beautiful miniatures. And, of course, we will link to your website and to your Instagram so people can enjoy them too, and give you a follow on social media.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Tamar. It's really been fun getting to know you and get to know the work that you do. It's absolutely beautiful.
I appreciate that, and thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Don't forget to scroll down the show notes where you'll find a link to Tamar's social media and to her website. And give us a follow while you're on Instagram. You can find us at The Art Podcast. We love to hear from you, as always, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions for artists to come on the show. And if you're on Facebook, you'll find us there too. Just look for Art. You can also reach us via email at hollowellstudios@gmail.com. And as always, if you have a moment and you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, please do leave us a 5-star rating and a review, because that helps our rankings and therefore helps others find the show. And I'm delighted to say that Art is performing really, really well in terms of its downloads. We're aiming towards 2,000 downloads a month this spring. So within a year of releasing this podcast, we launched in April, if you'll remember, of 2023. We're going to be in the top 20% of podcasts worldwide. So that's all thanks to you for listening. And as always, if you have a moment to share this with anyone who you think might enjoy the show, we do appreciate that too. And I'll be back next week when my guest will be the contemporary realism artist Felicity Starr. So I do hope you'll join me then.